Rounding Some Corners is here to explore the golden state for marijuana. What can you say about California? It's always on the leading edge of human progressions to try and recreate those conditions that otherwise wouldn't exist in a desert, which would be natural human conditions. And that certainly is true with the case of weed, where California has been on the most progressive wave of progression in legalizing marijuana in recreational and also medicinal situations. And California was one of the first states to introduce a dispensary system, but long before that, California was just on the vanguard with the surfer movement and Mexican weed coming up from the border across from Tijuana and that whole border area there. California just had a weed culture. It started with Cheech and Chong and it continues right up through the present day with all the crazy strains of marijuana that you can buy in a California dispensary. Pineapple Express was one of the very first ones getting across a humorous quality. California is always on the leading edge, and so California is a great state to be if you're a marijuana enthusiast. It's one of the states where you can truly feel like you're not only in a relaxed state when it comes to law enforcement, but you're also in a historic state with getting marijuana to be accepted into the general public. Thank you very much, California. You truly are a golden state. We're going to take a look at some of the product that comes out of a typical California dispensary, if there is such a thing in California. California always at the forefront of innovation. Here's some bud here. This one is a hybrid. It's got the terpenes on here. You can read them for yourself, but it lists 3 of the predominant ones. There's over 100 terpenes in the cannabis plant. The human being can only pick up a few of them. The potency on this one is 31% THC or thereabouts, but this is what's interesting is the box turns into a rolling tray. And you can see the shape that's in there to prove it. Here's a closer look at California product as it's distributed. You can see the purple on this one. This one is Happy Trails. It's a private reserve and it's premium cannabis. You can see the purple on that. Gourmet weeds, easy to find in California compared to the old days in California where it was mostly Mexican brown or Acapulco gold, both coming from Mexico. Mexican brown is probably the most low-grade marijuana that you could get. It's before the whole technology started to innovate into developing strains that were higher in THC content and also CBD content. But the original strains of Californian weed were Mexican or Acapulco Gold, and then you got the really good stuff. And that was a weed that was literally as bright as gold as you could imagine a plant could be. This has come so far with the potency and also the specialty of the strains and the way that they make you feel. That's every person's responsibility with marijuana is to take on the product in a way that they feel good about. You should never be doing something that makes you not feel good. And there are so many different ways to try and feel good because the strains are so different because of the way that California and other states have developed them. Agriculture-wise, chemical-wise, which they've reduced, process-wise, etc. For example, this disposable here is actually live resin. Live resin is a technique for producing cannabis. You can see that the oil in it is a much darker color. It's an amber color. And live resin is a process of distilling the THC into a product that gets away from using some of the more harmful butane and additive products. So that's another innovation. There's more to come. I still think we can get rid of the packaging. There's still a lot of plastic here. A lot of wrapping stuff, a lot of lids and stuff that just get chucked out after a quick use. This included is one of the worst offenders in my opinion, so it can get better, and I'm sure that California will be on the leading edge of that. All right, so you have to remember, when you're in California, you're in a naturally artificial surrounding, if that makes any sense. It's a desert. It's not designed for it to be inhabited by people, so really everything, including weed consumption, is a creation by human beings for human beings. So for example, this is the Temecula wine country that we're in, and I'm standing on artificial turf. California is one of the few places that would have this kind of aesthetic in place, but it's part of the artificiality, both literally and metaphorically, of California. And this wine country is a vineyard that's been built it's vineyard country that's been built in the area of Temecula. There's no reason that marijuana shouldn't be known for that as well. There is Marin County in Northern California, which is really where marijuana was legendary long before dispensaries started to dispense it legally. All right, so continuing on with the theme of creating what seems like a human experience through artificiality in the desert, we have a swimming pool here, which otherwise is too cold to use and is not really big enough to swim in. And then we have the fire pit over here, which is, again, not a natural fuel that you're burning. It's not wood, it's propane onto lava rocks. And all of this is concrete. And it's very nice and it's very pleasing, but it's not natural. I guess it's desert natural, but it's with those human pleasures that come with California, including marijuana consumption. So in California, you spend so much time indoors, it's ironic because the sun is outdoors. You're actually seeking shelter from it because it's an unnatural situation to be in the sun that often. And so your indoor spaces become very important. And this place has more than most California places, but it does show the emphasis on recreation. This is an Airbnb. You're gonna see a lot more. It's designed to appeal to the average person who wants game rooms and other kinds of amenities. But just take a look at the innovativeness that goes in. We got a ping pong table, a poker table. Here we have foosball, darts on the wall, an air hockey table, and a vintage arcade, a bar, and a television, big screen, sort of, on the wall. This is all part of California indoor entertainment living. It's stimuli coming in the form of this kind of entertainment all the time because it's artificial living, really. It's living in a desert, and you have to create your own human experiences. The main creator of artificiality in California is the image manufacturer. I know you won't think of it that way, but that's what Hollywood is. It manufactures images, and so you feel when you're in California every sense of the movie industry encroaching on your life. You talk about movie stars, you watch movies, you're aware of what movies are coming out. There's a lot organized around celebrities' lives, and even little things like these kinds of touches in people's houses with a popcorn machine is all echoing out from that Hollywood way of living in California, the artificiality that's created when you're living in a desert to supply your human needs for entertainment. I don't normally take gummies, but since I'm in California, I'm willing to make an exception to create my own experience. In California, none of these surroundings here would be here if you didn't bring in artificial irrigation techniques, bringing water down from the mountains, from the snowpack mountains, diverting streams, etc. Rainfall would not grow these plants. As a result, you have much smaller yards and you have houses that are packed in close together. In order to create the illusion that each house is individual, some of them are varied by the way that they are painted. They're painted a different color from the one that's 5 houses down, that's also 7 houses down. The patterns repeat in California to try and create the illusion. It's all part of living in the desert and the illusion of life, really, because it's artificial. It's trying to create the illusion of individuality here in California. It's not to say that it isn't pretty, it's just that it's California. And once again, there are a few places in the world where you will find artificial lawns, let alone artificial lawns that are your front yards, but California is one of those. Just look at this. So I think it's about time to hit the road here in California. Inevitably, that's what you end up doing. You're always hitting the road because every time you want to go somewhere, you have to drive somewhere because you're in the desert. So you might as well enjoy it while you're here in California, because when you leave California, you'll be back to your natural experience. Oh, hey, come on into the California Adobe Hut. My friend made this. We're at a place called the Eco Shire. It's in Southern California in the desert. This is actually made from materials on the property. It's 35 acres and this has got like a mud base to it. You can create anything you want in the California desert. just remember, it's going to be unnatural. But in this case, it's got as much naturalness to it as you can have. It's got a little fire over here and a tiny wood stove. Smokes up the place, but it's still charming. And my cup of tea getting warm on top. And what better way to try and stay warm and cozy than with some marijuana product. In this case, I've got something that is kind of tough to find elsewhere, but in California, it's a nice choice that you have. It's cannabis infused hash rosin gummies. That's a lot of different things to consider at one time. Cannabis infused gummies, but there's hash and rosin, the process of extracting that hash, which is again not using as much of the solvents, the butanes, as is necessary. So this is a great way to imbibe, a much safer way, carcinogenic wise and otherwise, to take in gummies. And this surrounding here is typical of what you can do in California. It's got there's a rare rain going on today. You don't normally have this in California, and it's turning everything green immediately. And tomorrow when the rain goes away and it gets sunny, it'll immediately start turning brown. That's a desert, can come alive and can go back to sleep. All right, I'll show you the goods that I got from the California dispensary. So this was it's the end of a J. I don't agree with the filters that are put in here, but this is the way that you buy pre-roll, as they're called today. And this one had hash infused marijuana. So I like the hash because it keeps it burning longer, because it takes some of the edge off of marijuana as far as the harshness of the smoke goes. And hash just has a really nice bitter aftertaste. Plus, the hash buzz has a rock solidness to it that marijuana doesn't always give you. I also got two kinds of RSO capsules. RSO capsules are having Rick Simpson oil in them. These ones are square, and Rick Simpson oil is a concoction that Rick Simpson put together to treat a skin cancer that he was experiencing in Canada, and then it became a protocol for making marijuana products that is used in many different forms, including the capsules that I showed here. So I got two different kinds. I got a sativa, and I got a hybrid. A hybrid is a cross between sativa and indica. Indica is a strain that's named because marijuana was first, according to some records, used in India, and the strain that goes all the way back to India is indica. But for most people, indica gives a more mellow effect, and a sativa gives a more energetic effect, to put them very simply in a contrast. And a hybrid is somewhere in between. But really, it's all depending on the way that a person feels. That's how you determine whether a sativa makes you feel like you have more energy, or an indica makes you feel like you are more relaxed. And sometimes they can do both, if you can believe that. There is something called an entourage effect, and that effect is when you have several different terpenes and several different cannabinoids at once coming together to form, I guess, the perfect union inside of your body and your mind at one time. And it's just the most pleasant balance of mind ease, E-A-S-E, and physical ease as well, but also mental stimulation. I would say those are three things going together are what happens when you get the entourage effect. And here are some cannabis infused gummies, but they have hash in them, which is essentially the oils that come off of the cannabis plant. To take those off of the plant, there's different ways of doing that to get that oil property off the cannabis plant. But hash is that property, it's the oils. And then rosin is a way of distilling those oils that doesn't involve using solvents and butanes. And these gummies are looking like, these particular ones are papaya flavored. And you can see here, I'll take the coloration off, what they look like, these little gummies. Unfortunately, gummies do combine marijuana with sugar, which is something that I think should be taken with consideration, because then you're also experiencing the effect of the sugar on your bloodstream, which is going to have effects that actually marijuana is trying to counteract. We're talking about the increased heart rate. We're talking about the injection of the sugar drug into the bloodstream. But for some, gummies is the way to go. And you can get gummies that have less sugar on them. These ones do have a sugar coating. You could see that on the outside, but some gummies have less sugar and are more plain tasting, more fruity tasting. Those are the ones that have, I think, a better way of really showing what the marijuana buzz is like.
So here we have the essence of California artificiality and California nature, so to speak. To the right is the nature. That's what the normal desert would look like. It's very arid looking. It's rocky. There's not much that can survive there except for plant life that has a very low need for water. And even if it has water, it can retain water. You have some blooming flowers this time of year because this is the rainy season, but for most of the time, that is the natural desert, and it is in a much browner, much more arid state. Now that is juxtaposed with California artificiality, which is what you can do if you bring water to the desert. And you can add cacti, and you can add blooming flowers, and you can landscape and hardscape just with water. It doesn't make this landscape sustainable because the desert has no real water to sustain people. So it's just another example of artificiality in California that's pleasant, but nonetheless, it's artificial. Here it is. The streets lined with palm trees, none of which would be here if they weren't brought here and planted. Surrounded by mountains always. Surrounded by cars and traffic noise almost always. Surrounded by artificially kept grass. Not almost always, but in a lot of places. And by artificially kept, I mean it has to be watered, as in watered every day and sometimes more than once a day. Again, this is a time of year here in California where there's a lot of rain. This is the end of March and there's a lot of rain. And even then you can see how much maintenance is needed to keep all of this stuff green. Just imagine in the middle of August when it's 95, 98, 102 here in Palm Springs. No rain for months. It's all part of desert living. Now, a lot of states that were resistant to marijuana dispensaries opening up in their neighborhood, and even some that have become more welcoming to them, have been worried about what those dispensaries would bring to the neighborhood, like crime or unsightly characters, etc. What we have found is that neighborhoods by and large are not affected by cannabis dispensaries, except that crime actually goes down because there are more security cameras in place that help survey the surroundings. But most cannabis dispensaries are as unobtrusive as this one over here. It's just another store of many in a strip mall, lined along the street. There are no unsightly characters hanging outside of this cannabis dispensary right now. There is only traffic noise and other normal surroundings outside other retail outlets. All right, so this particular store is branding itself, primitive as it is, with the green cross, which is the universal sign for medical care. But the green cross here is embodying a safe, medically oriented environment for this cannabis shop here. And when you walk in, it's going to be very boutique-y. You'll have ATMs there on the right to get cash out because cannabis, at least at this point in time, still suffers from the antiquated, some would say archaic banking laws in the U.S. that prohibit cannabis dispensaries from interstate trade and taking advantage of banking services that other companies are able to take advantage because they don't have products that are Schedule I controlled substances like marijuana is. Nevertheless, there are ways to easily buy it that are made available, such as ATMs when you get inside, and also debit cards are taken through a backdoor method where extra fees are charged to get that cash to the marijuana dispensary, but it's relatively easy to pay, is all I'm saying, once you get inside, and then very boutique-y when you get inside, with glass cases and bud tenders, who are people that are going to come over and they're going to gently see if you have a preference or a choice or what your level of experience is with marijuana products, and they're going to take it from there and make your purchase very easy. All right, so most dispensaries are going to give you a coupon or a discount on your first visit. This one here is 25%, which is much appreciated. And an expanding part of the cannabis dispensary market is definitely the liquid side of things, trying to replace those drinks, mostly alcoholic drinks, you must say, with a different experience. And so I'm going to get 2 THC infused drinks. I'm going to get the Orange Kush, which has got 100 milligrams of THC. That's quite a bit. I take high THC. I'm going to get a mango. And I'm going to get a high punch cannabis infused. All right, so I'm going to set these down here. We do have permission to record here, so that's very nice to have. Showing some of the other products. And you have more on the candy side of things, which is the way that I would call this way of distributing cannabis. It's got the sweet tooth to be satisfied with sugar products, gummies, chocolates, etc. There's some more along here. Here we get into some capsules. These are tough to find in many states, including my own in Pennsylvania. This is a really nice assortment, and it speaks to that green cross out there, the medicinal side of marijuana. So you can vary the CBD, which is mostly that body healing side of things, anti-inflammatory side of the cannabinoid side of the plant, and then you have the THC, and you can increase or decrease that balance. You can also do indicas and sativas. And now we come to the vaping side of things. You have your cartridge vapes, which are going to be battery charged or battery dispersed in most cases, and you have many different ways of processing the liquid that goes in there. You have processes that are have a more solvent, or you have processes that are more solvent oriented. And you have processes like rosin and resin, which are different ways of distilling the THC cartridges. And now over here, I do have a representative from the store who I asked to answer a couple questions for me about the disposables. So this is the disposable side of things. And if I wanted to get something that was high THC and it was also on the less solvent side of things, a live resin or a rosin, what would you be recommending for me? And I would either say hybrid or indica.
Well, we have a live resin jeter. We have this available. It's in a modified grape strain. Also, my personal favorite right now is going to be our hashish. 100% solventless. This is going to be made with live rosin. There's a half gram in here, and they're out the door for 35.
Okay, and I do have to say that he happens to have chosen one in hashish, which is my favorite form of cannabis. It's the rawest form you can get from the plant. You just rub your hands on it to get oil, but this is a more complicated way of extracting that hashish. Are you able to comment on how that makes its way into this cartridge by any chance?
I'm not 100% familiar with hashish's process, but I do know that there is multiple ways of extracting rosin, and I believe they do use an ice powder.
Okay, and can you tell us why you like this personal and your favorite? Why you like this one, the hashish one?
The live rosin is going to be a lot cleaner, and a lot of the other products down here, they use distillates and a little bit more chemicals in the extraction process. So when
you can taste that, right?
You can taste it.
I feel that way too.
And that's when you get a lot more of like the vape flavors, a lot more fruity flavors. Mm-hmm. The hashish is going to be a lot more natural. They don't use any artificial terpenes. So it's going to be a lot cleaner, a lot healthier, and you get a lot stronger of a high from it.
Well, man, you and I have similar tastes. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Got my produce from my marijuana dispensary. Wherever you are, it makes things better. In the middle of the high desert or the low desert, it's a great thing to be able to have access to. And this dispensary is just another example of why they belong in your friendly neighborhood. Well, it's always important to have enough water with you, and it's especially important in the desert. So I got plenty of that with me for a short walk, 30 minutes or so, through this Taquitos Canyon, which is named after an indigenous nation that was here. And what better way to spend your time, in my opinion, no matter what your surroundings, California and elsewhere, after you visit a marijuana dispensary, than to go out into nature and appreciate all the beautiful surroundings that it has to offer. Desert, tropical climate, ocean, wherever you are, nature delivers. So in the end, rounding some corners, took a trip to California to experience both the artificial side and the natural side. And if it weren't for marijuana, we wouldn't quite see it that way.